If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan.
You gotta be confident about your Achilles when you show up.
Yeah, I mean, I got him at
Chris Dowhouse.
Hearing about Mr. Pointless fantasy
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
Well, hello there, and thank you for tuning in to Operation Domination, watching live on our streams on the Fantasy Football Advice Network, whether it be on Twitter, X, or their Facebook page. We're doing something new. We're going to be dropping our episode, pre-record on YouTube the next day. Seems to be kind of working out better that way. But if you want to tune in to us live, get those questions on Facebook in particular, we can talk about that live then. And always follow Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app. Yes, I'm back. I was back yesterday, finally off the IR, and back in action in the host seat here on a Thursday night to talk a little bit about our injury updates, which to me give you the biggest edge of all. And now I want to introduce our special guest who makes this whole show go. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. He's the number one medical expert in all of fantasy sports. The one, the only, Mr. Brian Scott.
Thank you. Another great intro, Dan. Another great intro.
I like that nice touch at the end by you. Way to get the applause in there for yourself. I like that. You deserve it.
They were applauding you more than they were applauding me. Trust me.
Oh, no. You are the star of this show. You tell us everything we need to know. So, yeah, we got to dive right into it because we got a laundry list of, unfortunately, big names that we have to talk about. The first one being Anthony Richardson, who's dealing with a hip issue. Did he give birth? I don't know, because his play hasn't been that great. But I don't know. Brian, what's your take here on Anthony Richardson with his health?
Well, some reports actually said it was more of an oblique injury. I think he might have got what's called a hip pointer, which basically is like a contusion to the front part of your pelvis there, right kind of where your belt sits on your hip. So it's hard to say if it's actually an oblique, which is kind of right there, and that's where it attaches, or if it's actually a hip. Either way, he practiced for the second straight day. I'm leaning towards him suiting up and being ready to go this weekend. It doesn't sound like it was anything serious. When those injuries do occur, though, they can be quite painful. You got some nerves that kind of wrap around the anterior part of your hip there and your iliac crest, which is basically your pelvis there. So those can be very sensitive initially when they first happen. Sounds like he's getting better. He was on the field again for the second straight day. I think he's going to be fine.
Yeah, that explains why he got knocked out of the game. But yes, he has been limited the past 2 days. The problem with Anthony Richardson right now is that even going into last week, I had my QB 18. I wasn't starting him anyway. It's been so bad, especially as a passer. You can't trust anything. And he's not rushing the way that we wanted him to, the way he was last season. And when he does rush, he's been getting himself injured again. So it's like, it's a crazy situation. I got my QB 18 this week. Even if he plays, I'm looking for other options. Somebody who's out there right now, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith. I'd rather play those guys. Of course, Baker played in the Thursday night game, so that might not be an option if you didn't already pick that up. But Geno's available in a lot of leagues out there. Sam Darnold's even available in some leagues out there. I played either one of those guys over an Anthony Richardson. And it sucks from the Colts wide receivers perspective. I'm looking at Michael Pittman and Josh Downs. I'm like, well, I would have played you guys, but now I got Pittman, you're a low-end wide receiver 3 if I don't have anybody else better on my roster, because we do have bye weeks kicking in this week with 4 teams on bye. Josh Downs is even on my radar. I want Joe Flacco. That's how bad it is on Joe Flacco. Oh, man. So do what you got to do. I would not drop Anthony Richardson yet, just for the record, guys. He still has the rushing upside, but he's got to work through the slump that he's in it presently. Jonathan Taylor on the same team now. He's dealing with an ankle issue. Now, they called it it's a high ankle sprain. It's kind of like the Christian Watson deal. High ankle sprain, but it's a mild high ankle sprain, which I still don't know what the hell that even means.
well, let me just simplify it for you like this, Dan. It's a much worse injury than a traditional ankle sprain. It involves different ligaments, and it's very rare that it's mild. It takes a lot of force to have this happen in the first place, and it's usually rotational type of injury. So it's a little bit different forces that are involved, which creates more higher energy type of injury. So it's a little bit more significant, and it usually takes a longer time to heal for that reason. Now you factor in that Jonathan Taylor has dealt with ankle issues throughout his career, dating back 2 years ago when he actually had off-season surgery to address an ankle issue that lingered all through 2020-21. Hopefully it's not the same ankle. Hopefully it's not that severe, but he's just missed his second day of practice today. Highly doubt we'll see him this weekend. The question is not when or if he's going to return, it's going to be when. So it could be a couple of weeks. This could be more serious than they're letting on. Usually with a high ankle sprain, it is.
Yes, like you said, definitely don't expect to see him this week. Hasn't been practicing yet. Here's the problem with Jonathan Taylor. Typically speaking, when a running back goes down, a fantasy owner may have the luxury of going and picking up his handcuff off the waiver wire. In this case, Trey Sermon is the handcuff. Trey Sermon stinks. Okay, so that's the issue. We have 4 teams on bye. Taylor's hurt. You may not have another option because Trey Sermon is at least going to get some of the volume, but he stinks. So I wouldn't trust it. I have him at RB36, like very borderline RB3. And I'm looking for other options, maybe in the same vein of a Tank Bigsby. If he's still available, he is in some leagues out there. I'm looking for options like that to pivot to because I don't want to have to play Trey Sermon this particular week. And I hope Jonathan Taylor's back sooner rather than later because otherwise this is just going to get brutal here for the Indianapolis Colts. This is another tricky one we got to talk about. Joe Mixon dealing with an ankle issue. And this is weird because he came back to practice a little bit last week. They kind of made it seem like he had a chance to play, and then they ultimately decided to rule him out. But they're like, okay, he's going to come back in week 5. But then he hasn't practiced yesterday or Thursday. So what's going on with Joe Mixon?
Well, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Just like I said with Jonathan Taylor, he's dealing with a high ankle sprain. Initially, they thought it was mild. There's not many mild high ankle sprains. He was actually optimistic that he wasn't going to miss any time, and then here you go, fast forward 2 weeks later, and he's probably not going to play again this week. And part of the reason that happened was because he got out there Friday and realized, yeah, I'm not ready. And that's often what happens with these high ankle sprains. They start feeling much better. They start feeling good. You throw them back on the field. They do a couple of short little drills or whatever, and then they realize, like, this thing's still not right. And the worst thing you want to do with these is try to play too soon and aggravate it, because then you're just looking at even longer amount of time to heal. So he probably tried to give it a go and gave it a good effort on Friday and realized he's not ready and maybe developed some swelling or something, but doesn't look good. We're heading in now to week 3 here where he'll be missing. IR wasn't an option, or at least they didn't consider it when he first got hurt, but it might have been worthy of an IR trip because now you got roster issues. And then you've got their other running back that was also out last week too, Dameon Pierce. So, that's a big problem.
It's a big problem. I forgot to put Pierce on the list. I probably should have, but he's another one where he's been dealing with this hamstring issue, and it's been kind of murky as far as what his status is. He also has not practiced yesterday or Thursday, so I don't think he's going to play either. So at least with the Texans, we understand what the situation is. Cam Akers is going to come down on early downs. He's going to play. He's got a chance for a touchdown because he does get the goal line work. And you have a Dare Ogunbowale is going to be playing the pass catching down work. So if you have a PPR league, maybe you're looking at Ogunbowale in a flex situation, especially in a heavy bye week. Cam Akers is still the guy I want to own, but ultimately only RB3s as a ceiling. When we move on here, I want to lump these two guys together. We have Cordarrelle Patterson and Jaylen Warren. Patterson dealing with an ankle, Warren dealing with a knee, maybe themselves not fantasy relevant in their own right, but if they don't play, things could get interesting for Najee Harris. So first, I want your take on what you think their status is going to be on Sunday.
Well, both missed 2 days of practice already this week, and it doesn't sound encouraging that either of them are going to be out there. In fact, Cordarrelle Patterson was seen in a boot not too long ago, like Tuesday. So if that's any indication of what's going on, it doesn't sound good. And Jaylen Warren, he's got some type of knee injury. They haven't really been too specific about what it is. But again, not practicing 2 days in a row on a Thursday doesn't give you much time to prepare. Even if he was to get out there on a limited fashion on Friday, very skeptical that he'll be available this weekend.
So the positive side is if you have Najee Harris, he might actually get all the work, all the bell cow work, runs and the passing game. We kind of saw that come to fruition to some degree last week when Patterson got knocked out in the first quarter. Yes, it's been absolutely frustrating. As somebody who has Harris shares in multiple leagues, watching Arthur Smith smack him up the A gap over and over on 1st and 10 when everybody knows it's coming has been driving me just as mad as been driving you guys. The good news is they're playing the Dallas Cowboys this week, who don't have DeMarcus Lawrence, who don't have Micah Parsons, who have been terrible against the run. So if you have Najee Harris, he's a must play. I do have him as a locked-in RB2 as a result of this, and he's going to get a bell cow workload, it looks like, on Sunday. Now we get into Travis Etienne. He's been dealing with a shoulder issue, but I think maybe he's going to be okay. What do you think?
I think he will. He actually, when he got hurt in the game, he actually didn't miss, or he came back. He didn't have to leave the game. And then he did practice in a limited fashion the last 2 days. So he probably just got a little banged up, maybe a little AC joint sprain or something, not really sure, but doesn't sound like it's too serious. And, we're far enough into the season now where a limited practice for a guy like a running back at the running back position doesn't necessarily sway me in either direction about playing or not playing. It sounds like they're just kind of being cautious here. So I think he'll be ready.
So that's good news about his availability. What's been problematic for Travis Etienne owners, of course, like so many other running backs that were taken in that first round are dealing with now, a la Bijan Robinson, a la Breece Hall, is that their backups are getting more work than what we anticipated. Tank Bigsby has been good in his opportunities. Travis Etienne keeps getting a little bit banged up in these games, not necessarily missing significant time, but as a result of this, we've seen Tank Bigsby get an annoying amount of work, and Travis Etienne owners are not getting the value back that they spent at their ADP. This is probably going to continue, unfortunately. The Jaguars have been an absolute dumpster fire to this point at 0-4, and because Bigsby's been decent with his touches, I don't think that's going to go anywhere. Travis Etienne's still the guy you want to own. Travis Etienne's still somebody you want to play as a mid-level RB2, but that ceiling of a low-end RB1 that you drafted him to be, frankly, is just not there, especially not until he gets 100% healthy. Moving on here, we got Brian Robinson. Now, this one's a little bit tricky. He was kind of on the injury report with a knee last week, but he was fine for the game, had a great game. But now he hasn't practiced both Wednesday and Thursday. And his teammate, Austin Eckler, looks like he might be trending on his way up. So what's your take on that backfield of the Commanders?
Yeah, so interesting how this is kind of unfolding here, which makes me kind of think that maybe Robinson might get a rest week here because all of a sudden Eckler's cleared concussion protocol and is practiced in full, and then Robinson misses his second straight day of practice. So not exactly sure what this injury is, but perhaps late in the game this past weekend, he aggravated it, whatever it was. And this could be one of those things where maybe we see him in a limited practice tomorrow, or I'm sorry, on Friday, and then perhaps he's listed as questionable, and then as a true game time decision, or we may not see him at all, and they're going to use the opportunity of Eckler coming back to give him some time to heal and recover.
Yeah, that's a big deal because right now Brian Robinson is an RB1. I actually have him ranked at RB9 heading into the week if he in fact would be available because he's just been great. He's been scoring touchdowns. He's one of the few running backs getting a lot of the work and being efficient with it on top of it. So we'll have to keep our eye on this. But if he does miss and Austin Eckler is back, which it looks like it's going to be, go ahead and plug in Austin Eckler as a lock him in RB2, a top 20 running back, frankly. And we know he'll catch the ball at the very least too. Another situation here that's kind of strange. We didn't really find out about this injury until after the fact, but Devin Singletary is dealing with a groin issue, and he's been out of practice.
Yeah, missed a second straight day of practice. Didn't sound like he was too concerned about this injury. He was optimistic that he still could be ready to go come Sunday. But again, until we see him get at least a day in of practice on Friday, we may not know. It's almost guaranteed he'll be listed as questionable. The problem is, with a groin injury that can severely limit your ability to cut back and make quick, explosive movements at the line of scrimmage as a running back. So that could really hamper his availability this weekend. Even if he does suit up, it might result in limited amount of snaps. So we could see some extra work for Tracy Jr. or Eric Gray.
Yeah, but that's the issue, right? So, like, if Devin Singletary doesn't go, there's not really a handcuff here I want to own because you're probably going to get a mixture of Eric Gray and Tyrone Tracy and somebody we're going to talk about the receiver later. They might not have their best playmaker. Seattle's coming off a Monday night game where they got shown up by the Detroit offense. Seattle's like a top 3 defense for me this week. I don't know if the Giants are going to be able to move the ball all that well, so I don't want either Tracy or Eric Gray if Devin Singletary were to miss, unless I'm completely desperate in a deep league. Maybe I'll look Tyrone Tracy's way as the pass catching back, as the Giants will likely need to come back from behind. Is Raheem Mostert finally going to play?
Dan, we've had Raheem Mostert on our injury updates and stuff for the last, 10 years, even though we've only been doing this for about 4. Who knows? He was listed limited last week and then ended up inactive for the game. This will be like the 3rd week he's missed with this mysterious chest injury, whatever that is. I'm not optimistic about him, just given his history in general with injuries across the board. So your guess is as good as mine. I'm going 50-50 here. He'll probably be listed as questionable if he's even listed active at all.
And here's the kicker part about it. Even if he is active, because of how putrid the Dolphins offense has been in the absence of Tua Tagovailoa, I just don't know if you're playing him as a flex, even if you've been holding on to him this entire time. So, and if you're a Etienne owner, you better hope Raheem Mostert stays out, because volume is your only hope that Etienne can give you something at the moment, because it's been brutal completely for the Miami offense. It's absolutely brutal. You know what else is brutal from the wide receiver position? Rashee Rice. Now, this has been a weird situation because usually we know by now if the guy actually has an ACL. He did go on injury reserve today, but they're still waiting for swelling in his knee to go down to get a second opinion. Am I hearing that right, Brian?
I think he's actually on IR now.
He is, but they still didn't actually say what it was. They just put him on IR.
Okay, so so Andrew LeDuc and I, with That Sports Podcast Network, we put out our Inside the Medical Tent article today. And I love that you brought him up, because I usually sit down to write this blog the night before. So I did this yesterday, or at some point yesterday evening. And I don't like to brag, but I nailed this. I knew that something weird was happening, because there's no way it should take as long as it did to get the results of that MRI he had on Monday. Most orthopedic surgeons and sports medicine physicians who monitor these guys and are the team docs are able to look at MRIs and know almost immediately, based on that and their clinical exam, what the problem is and how to address it. My theory was that they probably saw some stuff on that MRI that looked problematic, in a sense that not only was there something surgical that needed to be done, or perhaps it looked like there was something surgical that needed to be done, but they couldn't quite confirm what they were looking for. And so they may have given one recommendation, and Rice and his organization or his agent weren't happy with that particular suggestion and are now seeking a second opinion. Meanwhile, the Chiefs are like, no, we're pretty confident with what we're seeing and the result of this MRI and clinical exam. And so he's going to IR. Now, that doesn't stop Rice from going out and seeking a second medical opinion and getting other input about what he should do to treat this particular injury. My guess is that there's probably some major structural injury there, whether it be a partial ACL tear or some high-grade injury to one of the ligaments that may be in need of surgical reconstruction, and that's where the kind of conflict is. They may not be able to say with 100% certainty that, yeah, that thing's torn, his knee's now unstable, we need to fix it. He might just be seeking somebody else to kind of back that statement up, or perhaps give him some other options. So either way, this is going to be a long-term absence, potentially season-ending. Surgery is very realistic here, based on what we've seen from the injury itself and the way this is kind of playing out.
Yeah, I think we should be prepared that Rashee Rice is out for the rest of the year. In his absence, what does that mean? Well, guess what? Travis Kelce owners who have been begging for him to get going, he'll get going. He had 7 catches and 89 yards right off the rip in that game when Rashee Rice went down. They're going to need him, especially in that middle of the field. And right now, the middle of the field is the only place Mahomes is hitting accurately. I mean, Xavier Worthy is kind of what I thought he would be. He's going to be a boomer bust wide receiver 3, depending upon whether or not he hits that big play that day. As the roles for him is not really going to change. He's going to stay on the perimeter here. So it's going to be about those few touches, maybe gets a little bit more of a target share, but that's about all you can really hope out of Xavier Worthy. So if people are clamoring for him because I think he's going to somehow take the Rashee Rice role, he's not. And if that's the case, go ahead and sell him high in redraft leagues. But Travis Kelce owners, guess what? Your season just got turned around as a result of this injury. Tank Dell, bruised ribs. We're going to finally see him.
We should. I think he's been back on the practice field, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he has.
And I would expect him to be back from this. It wasn't a serious injury to begin with. But he did take some time to rest. Ribs could be very painful, and with the receiver position, you definitely want to give them some time to heal. He's already missed, I think, a week or two, so I think he's had an adequate amount of time to heal back from that. But Dan, real quick, whenever you hear a head coach say additional testing, that's a red flag, as in the case of Rashee Rice. So
sure,
again, those are some clues to look for with the injury updates. Additional testing when you're suspecting an ACL injury is usually code for he's going to get a second opinion.
Yeah. I totally agree. History repeats itself every time with that one. Tank Dell, by the way, wide receiver 3. If you got him, you could definitely play him or even as a flex option this week. I expect the Texans offense they haven't really clicked yet outside of Nico Collins. I expect them to start clicking pretty soon here. Let's talk about Christian Watson, kind of similar to the Jonathan Taylor. We talked about a mild high ankle sprain. Again, whatever the hell that means. Yeah. What's your take here with Watson? Is any different?
I laugh at this report too, because if it was mild, then why did he have to get literally carted off the field when he got hurt? And I don't think he's been practicing as of yet. This is going to be extended absence for sure. Christian Watson was dealing with all this hamstring stuff in last couple of years, and now he's got this injury. So I don't expect it to be a quick turnaround here. There's no such thing as a mild high ankle that then requires you to get carted off the field. Those things just don't make sense.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with that one. So Watson, we don't expect to see him this week. I do expect Dontavian Wicks for the next couple of weeks at least to take his spot, and he has filled it nicely. He does a lot of the same things Watson does. He's a menace in the red zone. He can be a big play threat. Jordan Love's back in the lineup. Dontavian Wicks was my crush of the week. I got him as a top 10 wide receiver right now heading into week 5. So Dontavian Wicks, if you're lucky enough to pick him up, make sure you're playing him until Christian Watson does return. And there's a non-zero chance that Wicks holds on to this job because Watson wasn't really performing as much. They were already kind of rotating the two, and Wicks establishes himself in his absence. I wouldn't be surprised if they just stuck with Dontavian Wicks, and maybe we have a debate about Watson or Romeo Doubs on the other side instead. Let's talk about Malik Neighbors dealing with concussion. He had till Thursday, but it's not sounding great.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see him this weekend, unfortunately. And that's probably the best thing to do for him, young receiver, showing some great progress early on in his career. He got pretty dinged up when he went down with that concussion. I don't think they're going to rush him back. He has not yet stepped back on the practice field, which means he has not yet been able to clear some of his symptoms. So that's a little concerning. Young, player, these things can become cumulative when talking about concussions. So we want him to recover fully before they throw him back out there. This is not a good situation to throw him back in. Let's let this kid rest. Let's let the Giants get on without him. Let him recover, and then we'll see him back hopefully in next week or the week after.
Yeah, so as a result to that, it'll likely be Wan'Dale Robinson as the top quote-unquote target. I only like Wan'Dale Robinson in full-point PPR leagues, okay? Half-point PPR, I have no interest because you're talking about a guy who's catching the ball and falling down at the 4-yard mark. You're not getting anything out of him. Daniel Jones is not targeting him out of the field. He's not getting yards after the catch. But if you're in a full-point PPR league, and especially in a game where I expect a majorly negative game script, Wan'Dale Robinson does have a nice floor for you that you can go ahead and attach yourself to, at least as a wide receiver 3. Now, moving on from that, we got Davante Adams. So I'll talk a little bit about the news side of it in a bit, but all the reports were this is a real hamstring injury, but maybe not a severe one because we're talking about a 1 to 2 week, I think was the report I saw. So what do you make of that if that is the case?
I'm very skeptical. This is one of those moments where the organization is using an injury to kind of mask some of the disgruntled complaints of the athlete who's looking for a trade. This is to kind of save face on the part of the organization. I'm not saying he's not injured, but I'm saying they're probably overplaying this angle a little bit to kind of dull the critique of the organization as they're dealing with this potential trade situation.
Yeah, so he's not going to play if the Raiders are truly going to honor his request, which it actually sounds like they're trying to. He's not going to play until he's traded. So if you had Davante Adams, you have to hold him. A lot of people out there are saying they're skeptical about buying Davante Adams low while they still can. Look, it depends on where you are in your league. If you're 3-1, 4-0, maybe even if you're 2-2 and you feel pretty good about your roster, I'm looking at buying Davante Adams because guess what? No matter where he goes, I don't care if it's the Jets or the Saints or wherever, it's going to be better than the Raiders. It's going to be better than Gardner Minshew and Luke Getsy. So I would buy Davante Adams thinking at some point in the second half of the season, he's going to be in a better situation than he is now. And you might be able to buy him low if the team has him and they're 0-4, 1-3, a 2-2 team that has been scoring maybe many points. So this is somebody I'm looking out to go get. From a fantasy standpoint, obviously the best situation would be the Buffalo Bills. I don't know if they would do it because they literally got out of Stephon Diggs' contract a year early so they could eat the dead money and be cap free next season. So I don't know if they would bring in Davante Adams as a result of that, but that would be the best fantasy spot. I think, and what I predicted before we went into the season, he's going to be a New York Jet. Because that's what I predicted, that he would by the deadline, he would be a New York Jet playing with Aaron Rodgers once again. And remember, the Jets, they moved cap space around. They have plenty of cap space to bring Davante Adams in. It's not working out great for Garrett Wilson. I wouldn't be surprised if that wound up being the move. Last one real quick, because this is kind of interesting. Khalil Shakir popped up with an ankle issue, and I don't think he's practiced the last couple of days.
Correct. He's been out the last 2 days. Unfortunately, he got injured in the first, I think, quarter or first half of their game this past weekend. Did come back, had his ankle heavily taped up. This is one of those instances where it probably didn't really affect him much when it first occurred. He's probably running on some adrenaline. But the problem is, as you continue to play on an injury like this, the swelling will start to accumulate. And then fast forward like 24 hours later, usually is when the swelling can sometimes be at its worst. So he probably has been dealing with that in pain. And, better safe than sorry. He's been out the last 2 days, but I don't think we're going to see him if he hasn't been able to get back on the field, despite the fact that he played through it, the second half of the game last week.
Yeah, and he's been the top target for Josh Allen so far. Now, not severely. Look, they're spreading the ball around, annoyingly, because we haven't really been able to figure out who we actually want to own in this Josh Allen passing attack offense as a result of that. But if Shakir's out, and they have the matchup this week, where it favors Dalton Kincaid over the middle part of the field. I think this is going to play to his benefit, get him a little bit more target share. Tight end position has been dreadful. If he can get a little bit more volume, even if it's not a great statistical line at the end of the day, Dalton Kincaid is somebody that you need to continue to start, and this injury may help him out a bit. Speaking of tight ends, we go to George Kittle, been dealing with a rib issue. Where's he at? What do you think?
Well, supposedly he got hurt during the game, but then came back in and played. So it's maybe nothing that serious. He might just be taking the time off to rest. He's a veteran. He doesn't need much time on the practice field to prepare heading into the weekend. These guys by this point in their career are film savvy, game savvy, have played in the league long enough that they don't necessarily need to prepare in their offensive schemes and stuff as much as a younger player would or somebody who's just joined the organization. So this could simply be him just resting and preparing and getting ready to go this weekend. I probably be listed as questionable, but he could be a game time decision, and we might see him.
That's good. That's good because we need him. He's one of the few tight ends that's actually done something, most of the games that he's played. And yeah, he did come back in that game. So I do think we're going to see him in this week too. Trey McBride, I think he's trending in the right direction with his concussion issue after he missed last week.
Yes, I believe he actually practiced in full today, which means he's probably been cleared through the concussion protocol. If not yet, he certainly will. Assuming he got through the practice with no issues, he should be cleared in plenty of time heading into the weekend.
That's excellent. Trey McBride's available. You play him. And, we don't really talk about defensive injuries too much, but Fred Warner's a little bit banged up. If he's limited or not playing in this game because they want to rest him up, it could be a decent day, even on a tough matchup on paper against San Francisco. Evan Engram, are we finally going to see him coming off the hamstring issue?
Yeah, no.
I said, yeah.
Don't forget, he's a former Giant. I know all about him. He was limited in practice today. He ain't playing.
Look, the only reason I think he might, okay, one, being limited in practice, at least he's progressing in the right direction, right? Because they haven't been practicing at all. But the only other reason I think he might is it's an all hands on deck situation in Jacksonville right now at 0-4, and they may just throw guys out there. You got one good leg, okay, get out there, because at this point they need all hands on deck to make sure their season doesn't go down the drain.
Unfortunately, Evan Engram is not the savior that he may be people think he's cut out to be. So I don't think it's going to hinge on him playing or not. It might actually be a chance for the Jaguars to see what they have behind him and throw them out there and see, hey, let's see what we got in our backup tight ends.
Oh, that situation's getting bad real fast. Now we got, continuing on our tight end list, we got David Njoku, ankle issue, did come back to practice. He didn't practice today, but they reported that was the plan, that he would practice on Wednesday and then not practice on Thursday anyway.
Yeah, it sounds like they just wanted to kind of test him out and see where he's at, and he did some limited stuff on Wednesday, but did not practice today. According to them, this is kind of the plan as he works his way back from a pretty nasty high ankle sprain, which was occurred because of a hip drop tackle that did not get called, which was bothersome to me. This is what happens, with high ankle sprains. This is why when we talked about Jonathan Taylor and Joe Mixon earlier, you can see why I think those guys are still a ways away from coming back. But Njoku trending in the right direction. I don't think we'll see him yet this weekend. Hopefully he'll be able to ramp up his practice activity next week in preparation for that game.
And hopefully bring some life back to the bottom tight end 1 group 2, because it's been brutal. Last but not least, talking about a guy we've been able to kind of play and plug and play at the tight end spot and actually get some upside weeks. Taysom Hill, fractured ribs, I think is what I saw.
Yes, I saw that too, and that is concerning. That is very painful. It's not necessarily something that requires surgery, but it hurts like the dickens, and it's hard to play football with, whether you're padded and protected or not, especially a guy like Taysom Hill, who's asked to do numerous things on the football field in various positions. So, unfortunately, he'll probably miss a couple weeks is my guess. I don't think this is going to require an IR stint. He's a pretty tough dude. He's played through a lot of stuff in the past and hasn't missed much time and is very durable. But this is not a comfortable injury to have, no matter what position you play in football, and this is going to take some time to heal. I'm predicting at least a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so not only is it a tough injury to have no matter what position you play, and it would be a tough position if he was a true tight end, but basically Taysom Hill's the goal line back. So his job is to go in there when the biggest bodies are on the field and run through them. It's going to be a little bit rough to do that when you have fractured ribs. So yeah, I'm with you. I think there might be a couple of weeks before we see Taysom Hill, unfortunately, because he was at least giving us a spike that we could pivot to off the waiver wire. And now that's gone too. But that's going to wrap it up for our show. We got through that pretty quickly. Brian, thanks so much for coming on. Tell everybody where they need to check you out at and where you have content coming up.
Yeah, so at Injured List Pod on X, the Injured List Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. TheInjuredList.com is the website where you can find the Inside the Medical Tent weekly blog for a small nominal fee, which will get you early and insightful access to injury updates and fantasy roster strategy advice from our very own Andrew Leduc of That Sports Podcast. And I've got some episodes of my podcast, The Injury List, that I'll be releasing in the next week or two here. I will also be having a very special guest in the world of sports to talk about the recent hurricane that went through Western North Carolina and how that's affecting athletics in that small part of the country, which has been devastated by this natural disaster. So stay tuned for that. I might actually do that as a live stream. I'm really looking forward to that. It's a good friend of mine. He's actually going to be staying with me as he tries to get through this disaster, him and his wife. So that's something big I did not have planned, but we're going to do it next week sometime. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, heart goes out to all the people who are trying to survive and really just recover from the wreckage there was what's going on in the hurricane. And I hope everyone's going to be able to make it out and get back on their feet okay. We'll be back Wednesday, 9:30, like we always are, with our Week 6 preview with Operation Domination. Make sure you download us on your favorite podcast app. Follow us along on the Fantasy Sports advice.com website so you can get all of our content when you sign up for a pro member there, and follow at FF Advice Network too when we go live. Guys, we'll see you soon. Have a great weekend. Hey there. I want to thank you for watching Operation Domination today. And if you're enjoying the show, there are some ways you can help support us. You can go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination and leave us a 5-star review. And you can do this on any podcast platform or on our YouTube page when you go to at FF Advice Network. This completely helps out the show be able to grow, and also leave us comments to let us know how we can curtail the show to you, because you are the most important member of the show. So again, go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination to leave a 5-star review and leave a comment wherever you listen or watch the show, and we'll help better serve you.